We are back with Kevin Gordon. The album is The In Between, and you just heard You Can't Hurt Me No More, which is maybe it doesn't feel extremely connected to the rest of the album, but it is a real great single. Um, Tell me what it feels like to be vulnerable to someone hurting your heart in the worst way.
Um, I guess uh, at its worst, that sort of vulnerability feels like something you can't get away from. Um, Something that you're doomed to, you know. Um, I mean, I guess in terms of a romantic context or relationship oriented context, obviously those well, hopefully those feelings improve, um, and ultimately get better. But at the time, you know, it feels inescapable.
Yeah. Tell me about, I guess, how you came up with the way of writing that song, which instead of declaring that you're not okay to tell this story, you went the path of declaring that you are okay in a way that absolutely no one who's paying attention would find believable.
Interesting. Wow. Um, and yeah, you're picking up on that correctly. I don't know. From what I remember, I had just started with that idea of being out of range. Um, just struck me as kind of an interesting way to think about it. Um, that last verse was meant to be ironic. Um, Hopefully, it does come off that way. Um, I don't know, and I kind of wanted to again get at that feeling of loneliness, by the image of the seeing the red light out on the water, which actually was a real image that I saw one night in the middle of the night in New Orleans, looking out a hotel window. Um, that image suggested a lot to me in terms of uh, working in that song visually, um, showing instead of telling, which is something I try to do, um, which I suppose I got from my poetry background. But, yeah, um, it's an interesting thing about that song. Uh,
How does the
yeah.
red light in the water get that across?
Um, well, to me, when I saw that, um, it was like 3 in the morning, and I was looking out the window, and I had a view of the Mississippi River. Um, and I suppose it was some sort of warning light or buoy out on the river, that was blinking back slowly. Um, there was just something about it being the one thing happening in that darkness. Um, and I knew at the time that um, it felt important, so much so that I got my got my phone out and shot a video of it. Um, just, you know, among other reasons, just so I would be sure that I would not forget it. Um, but yeah, I don't know, it's an interesting image. Whether it succeeds or not, I guess is up to the individual listener.
And just to gather up one more great line, um, let's head over to Hammy Cecile when you talk about the requisite breakup sex. I feel like uh I feel like that was funnier to me than it had any right to be.
Well, I felt like I think that was a phrase that just kind of came out when I was first putting the song together. Um, I often work by having a melody in my head and a basic chord progression and kind of trying to hear what's there in terms of subject matter. Um, but I think as the song was coming together and I was looking at it, there was a need for some levity, um, not to mention, just the tragic comic nature of that point in a relationship, where all parties involved know it's an absolute mess, um, but yet here we are. Um, so um, that song in general, I think, was meant to be empathetic towards her. Um, you know, I have mixed feelings about including the line about self-harm. But I also wanted to be able to describe uh, what was happening, in the relationship in terms of things like that. Um, so, um, anyway, I've probably more than answered your question.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you have to maybe document something not so pretty if you're going to really write a song from the perspective of documenting where you've been in your life.
Hmm. Yeah, I think putting it in the song helped really make it real for me in a way that it wasn't at the time it happened. I mean, at that point in my life, I was what, 19, 20, and at that time, public awareness of mental illness and things associated with it just wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
And I was living in crazy Monroe, Louisiana. So sometimes I think living there, you sort of accepted things that might otherwise seem extremely odd or extremely troubling. Um, I don't know. I may be stretching that a bit.
Hey, it's your experience. That's what you're written down.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was more just coming back to it. It felt putting in the song brought it back, so that I could see it with uh, my current my current eyes, instead of from 40 years ago.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Trevor.
I always like to conclude these conversations by having the artist pick a song by another person, just something that this conversation sort of, like you described there, something that this conversation brought to the forefront of your mind.
Um, okay. Let me think. Well, there's a song by my friend Tommy Womack, um, called Alpha Male and the Canine Mystery Blood.
Oh, that is a title.
It's uh it's one of the best songs I've ever heard about uh you know doing being a songwriter, touring songwriter, and getting older and having children. And oh man, it's I still kind of tear up a little bit when I hear Tommy play it live, even though I've heard him play it, dozens of times. It's uh, it's dead on to me. It's really one of my favorite songs from the last several years.
All right, then I think that's a good note to go out on.
All right.
Kevin Gordon, the new album is The In Between.